Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery. Hosted by Fredd Carroll and life coach Scott H. Silverman. A mental health awareness and addiction recovery podcast. Don't be ashamed of your story. It will inspire others. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Ending the Stigma, A Path to Recovery with me, Fredd Carroll. That is Scott Silverman, Scott H. Silverman. Don't forget the H. He gets really angry when you do. And today we got my friend Brock Bevell, which is a great rock star name. You sound like a rock star. You look like one right now. Look a little undercover. You still look undercover. You're a former undercover police officer, correct?
I am, yeah. In right here in Arizona, man.
And unfortunately, due to that, you were involved in an accident, right, where you were run over, I believe?
Yeah, you want to hear the crazy part, man? It was 12 years ago today. I hit my 12-year sobriety today, and that was the day I was actually run over.
Okay, so, and you also were an addict based off of the pills that were prescribed to you, and you started self-medicating based off that, right?
Oh, man, yeah, I love them. Yes.
Yeah, and I guess that's it's a common problem that the doctors prescribed the pills that when used as their intended use, they work great, similar to fentanyl. Fentanyl is important to the operating and stuff, and that's what we're going to be talking about a lot today. But what do you want to talk about, Scott? Do you have anything to add to our guest right now? I know you know him, right?
I do. Yeah. He and I have spoken before, and I'm sure that at some point in time, he may have tried to arrest me, but since I'm older than him and I never got caught, there you go. So, but what Brock and I have spoken before, and, I think we're brothers from different mothers, and, his passion for helping others is above and beyond the charts. So it's Brock, it's really good to have you here today to share some of your experience, strength, and hope. By the way, happy anniversary. Congratulations on your sobriety and 12 years since your accident. I mean, that's a lot just to say in one sentence, and you did it. And I'm wearing a hat today, the Sons of Anarchy. I just thought I'd put one on since you guys were wearing a hat so I can look, what's the word? Inappropriate or appropriate? I don't really care. And interesting, this morning I had an exam because I'm trying to apply for life insurance, and I had a needle in my arm, and I had to pee in a bottle, and I had to have an EKG and all my vitals checked. And it was interesting because everything was just stellar, and my wife was shocked. My standing pulse rate was 68. My blood pressure was like 107/66. It was just incredible. So that made me feel good, and I don't like needles for a lot of different reasons, but I got through it. The nurse said, which arm would you like it in? And I pointed to hers.
That's good.
He goes, that's not an option. So Brock, tell us about you, because, and as Fredd said, we don't maintain a large live audience because we want to make sure that if we do anything that's unusual or controversial, Fredd wants to really punch it up in post-production. So welcome to Ending the Stigma. And so tell us about you, because you're the star today. You're our VIP, and that we flew into your studio. So we walked across the living room and sat down. But tell us about you. What do we need to know about Brock and what's going on in your world? And take us anywhere you want, from before, today, and what you're involved with. And clearly, opioids is a big topic of mine with my new book, The Opioid Epidemic and Fentanyl. I know you said you had some strong feelings about it before we punched up here. So but let people know a little bit about you, just so we have that baseline.
Yeah, brother. Thank you. First of all, thanks for having me. This is cool, man. What a cool podcast. What a platform. Hopefully that the three of us we could just get the word out. I'm tired of seeing my friends die. Can I just throw that out? And I think we all say that, but it's real. We're seeing in Arizona, we're just getting our butts kicked. And I'm a local. I'm a guy born and raised. How many Arizonans stay here? It's so hot, usually you come and go, but born and raised, And when I had the chance, man, I jumped at the opportunity to become a police officer. Always wanted to do it, even from a little kid. And so when I got onto the police department, I really found this niche. And my niche was arresting bad guys who were selling dope, man. And then I had an opportunity to get on a team that would arrest bigger fish, if you'd say. Like, I was on our SCAT team, which was our special crimes apprehension team, where we got to sell and buy dope. And I loved it, man. That was like the thrill. And I remember, guys, when I looked at these, so-called dopers, I had this disdain for them. I was like, dude, these guys are like the bottom feeders of the world. They're killing people. Now, realize this was even before fentanyl. I mean, it was around. The patches were around. Fentanyl's been around since, I believe, 1968. So it's been around. But what we were seeing being pushed here in Arizona was black tar heroin, rock cocaine, methamphetamines, big time. And they were kind of being driven. I don't know, Scott, if you've ever noticed this, but certain nationalities sell certain dope. You rarely see a white guy, a Caucasian male, selling heroin. It usually was sold by an African American or a Hispanic guy. And rock cocaine, it was usually sold on our streets here in Arizona by an African American. It was just, it was weird how it didn't cross paths. But April 11th, man, a couple of years ago, I was involved in an accident where a lady was prostituting her daughter for dope, and she decided to run us over. And that was kind of the beginning to my addiction. Here's what got me, Scott. I remember walking into the doctor's office. My doctor was prescribing me opioids for my surgeries. And he said, Brock, you're a cop. You will never get hooked on these things. You'll be okay. And I seriously took that like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm not like those guys. I'm not going to get hooked on this stuff. And I did. I got hooked. Now, there was a perfect storm in my life where we understand how addiction just doesn't hit everybody the same. But after they tried to put my body back together, they finally came out and said, we're going to medically retire you. So now I have these multiple injuries. I can't come back to work. I lose my profession. I lose my team. I have no connections. So I go from living this really high speed kind of life to now I'm home watching my kids, helping my wife change the diapers. And it was just like this total, man, it was difficult. So the more opioids I took, the better I felt. At least in my brain would slow down, be like, okay, I can handle this. Then the depression came in, the sadness came in, the hatred came in, the anger came in, the inappropriate relationships with other women came in, like all these things that you associate with dope until 10 years later, I'm looking up in the mirror saying, what the hell happened to me? I am that guy. I am those people that I was arresting. And so I have a great love for addicts. I started my own recovery program up in Northern Arizona. I did that for 6 years. And so I work in the business, and now I work with first responders, veterans who struggle with addiction and PTSD. That's kind of my love, if that makes sense. But over the last 6 months, man, I kind of have this new poke in the throat, man, about this fentanyl epidemic. I'm seeing these close friends, family members, kids just dying because they don't know anything about it, and we're not educating. As much as we hear about fentanyl, parents are still naive. Parents are still not paying attention. Parents are still saying it's not going to happen to my kid. My kid's LDS, or my kid's a Catholic. It's not going to come into my home. We have so much control. You know what? That's the kid that's passing away. And so that's where I hope that this podcast today, we can break down some of these walls, and we can kind of get to the bottom of it.
Well, hopefully we can. With your story has a very sniper movie type effect to it, where he came back from the war and couldn't handle life, and that's how you're describing working as an undercover cop, and then all of a sudden you don't have a team anymore. and you don't know what to do with yourself, and you just found an outlet to it. But where exactly is this fentanyl starting, and where is it coming through and coming from? Is it everywhere? Is it the black market?
Man, so if you want to know the truth, China plays a huge role in this, and not only China, but a specific town called Wuhan. I know that a lot of people have been hearing about it, especially during this COVID-19 outbreak. You know, there's been this speculation that fentanyl, or not fentanyl, but COVID originated there, right? They have this great big pharmaceutical companies that most of our medication, Advil, Tylenol, a lot of this stuff comes from China. And a lot of us we're not aware of that. But, and I'm always saying that because the DEA has really come out. I don't know if you guys saw it in Fox Business a couple of days ago by the DEA spokesman, Rusty Payne. And he was talking to Fox News, and he says, China, this is a quote by him, China is by far the most significant manufacturer of illicit designer synthetic drugs. There is so much manufacturing of the new drugs. It's amazing what's coming out of China. Hundreds of versions, including synthetic fentanyl and fentanyl-based compounds. So, I mean, that's our DEA. That's our intelligence department. That's not just Brock Bevell and Scott Silverman and you know, Fredd talking about this. This is our government saying, guys, listen up. It's coming from China. Now, the problem is our open borders. I mean, hell, it's coming from Canada. It's coming in from Mexico. The problem is it's being shipped from China. And remember back in the day, like you see on TV, these hand-to-hand transactions and these undercover cops. That's what I did. You know, and you can infiltrate these organizations and you can be involved and you can see where it's coming from. Well, shit, now all you got to do is go to your mail and it shows up in the UPS and you can get 1,000 fentanyl pills.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, and I don't disagree with anything you've said thus far, Brock. When I learned years ago with what they were doing in China, which is fascinating, is because I guess in China, there's a variety of different provinces. So the way they were doing it was they were manufacturing it in one province, shipping it to another province, and then packaging it and shipping it to another. And I heard I guess you'd call him the head regional oversight director of the DEA, who'd been working in China, who just flew in the night before. There were 300, basically sworn first responders in this room in San Diego, and they were breaking down how this worked. And the way that the province worked, they couldn't actually penetrate the original manufacturer because they couldn't trace it back because of the way the provinces were set up. So they had this perfect storm of manufacturing at large quantities. And, there was some quality assurance, I guess, if you could say that, kind of like the big super labs down in Mexico when they made methamphetamine, and they could do it at such a low price, nobody competed with them. But as the distribution hit and the consumer was getting, addicted to it so quickly. But the problem was a lot of them, when they started moving it in counterfeit ways and then mixing it with, counterfeit medication, people were taking a Xanax, not knowing that fentanyl was in it. So people were overdosing. And, a buddy of mine, just retired from the DEA. We told me stories about how, and I'm sure you did this too, when you would arrest people, you'd interview them and you'd ask them the best you could to get, information to roll someone over, where to come from. And the question came up, why would you sell a product that killed your consumer? And the common answer that I heard over the years was, well, whenever an overdose hits the news, business grows. So fentanyl has escalated in such a great way, and now it's you can get it on the dark web, and I don't even know if that's actually coming from China or not. Maybe some of the chemicals in it could be purchased, then you manufacture it at your home, you get it delivered through USPS to your garage, and then you make it, and then you mix it, and then you order these capsules on Amazon, mix it with whatever powder you want, or get a pill press, which you can buy, and make it look like something else. So, and we're seeing this accidental. I mean, when I heard that term, what was it? Maybe 5 years ago, accidental overdose. I thought, come on, that is bullshit. I mean, that's just a dope head that took too much. But the accidental overdose is a true outcome from young people who are taking a Xanax, for example, or they're taking cocaine or even crack or heroin or vaping it or mixed with marijuana, unbeknownst to them that there's this high grade fentanyl and they're expiring at a party. 8 or 9 people overdose. We hear it all the time. And what's fascinating is these are normally, a lot of them are kids who have never really experimented. It's a one-off for them. I told the story a couple different times. We actually had a methamphetamine addict in San Diego who was interviewed by the press, who shared with them that he was so concerned about his methamphetamine being cut with fentanyl, he got a hold of fentanyl strips and he was testing his methamphetamine so he could continue to get high and not overdose. I mean, that's a very sophisticated consumer if you think about it. But kids that are at parties, I don't know if you've heard the term the Skittle parties, where, everybody comes to a party, everybody puts their stuff in a jar, and at a certain time of night, somebody rings a bell or the band stops playing or the disc jockey makes an announcement. Everybody goes to the bowl and grabs something. And then in the newspaper, you hear 2 days later, 16 kids overdosed, 10 died. How the hell does that happen? Near a college campus, on a high school, a promenade, but kids are putting stuff in their bodies thinking they're going to get high and they're dying.
Yeah, man, you said some valuable things there. What I find funny is when you made the reference to when kids are overdosing, the consumer now wants to find that dope dealer and he wants his product. If your product is so good that it's making me overdose, I want it.
That's the way my mind used to work when I, took LSD or mescaline. The higher the purity, the better. The closer to the person who was making it, the more prestigious it was from a standpoint of consuming. But in those days, even if it was pure, people weren't overdosing and dying, even from heroin. When Whitney Houston passed away, it was Dr. Drew who for 3 days and all the media was so upset saying, look, the entertainment industry, the sports professionals, people with high net worth, people with access to whatever they wanted to buy, you weren't seeing people dying and overdosing. But now the cocktail, the mix, the danger, the high level of potency, I call it poison. To me, fentanyl is poison. It's not even a drug that you can get on the street today that isn't poison, because there's no quality assurance, there's no quality control, no one is caring about the end consumer. So they're just making it because there's so much money to be made with it, and you don't have to invest a lot. You can get it through the dark web, so there's really no tracing it. So, and here in our community in San Diego, our DA now is prosecuting, if they can get to the distributor, they're prosecuting them for, murder. And it's happening. But then you get a 24-year-old who's manufactured some fentanyl, sold it to a bunch of people, and he's going to probably go away for life, for murder. And then you've got the person who, manufactured 100,000 pills who isn't getting caught, and they're continuing to get their distribution because they know how to, bob and weave and work this. I mean, certainly they do. There was a big bust here recently with the Coast Guard, but every time they make a bust, they get excited. But I know, like that they get less than 10% of it. So the bigger the bust, that means the more they got through. So, and I have families ask me every week, and Fred and I talk about it. What are we going to do? How are we going to slow this down? What are we going to do to educate people? Because it's like the old days. You tell your kids, you go to a bar. I have 2 girls. You don't pick up a drink unless you watch it being poured, because people are putting date rape, drugs in drinks. So how do we message? How do we get the information? How do we educate so at least kids can make informed decisions, so they're not 21 years old going to a party and they're dying? I mean, it's just incredible.
I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I'm a parent. I have 5 daughters of my own. They're gone. 5 kids of my own. They're gone. And now I have 2 youngsters where I remarried. And one's in grade school, one's in high school. Okay, so we live in a community where fentanyl is obviously present. We've seen people dying. Now, Scott, check this out. On a daily basis, we get emails from the high school and the junior high school about COVID, about how to protect ourselves with COVID. If you get COVID, what the standard is, where to test, the nurse's information, the principal's information, the teacher's information. And I'm telling you, Scott, I probably get 5 emails a day from the school. Why don't we cover fentanyl the same way? Why are we not talking about this? It is mum. Nobody talks about it. I've gone up through the government, man, here in Arizona trying to push it all the way up and say, guys, why are we talking about this? There is so much funding in opioid that nobody wants to share it, right? So the thing is, if the schools are not, if they're so focused on this COVID, don't get me wrong, the COVID's fine, I get it. But why are we not putting as much care in the email system and educating our parents and educating grandma and grandpa and everybody in the community as we do with fentanyl?
Well, and I think to your point, I think that's the solution. And it is fascinating. You know, the CDC just came out with a report 2 months ago that 100,000 people died this last year in our country. Then 2 weeks ago, a report comes out and CDC says there's been over 2 million overdoses since 2019. Now, clearly not all of those overdoses resulted in people dying, but that is a stunning figure compared to the 100,000 who died in just the last year. I mean, in San Diego, our overdose rate's up 600%. So when you think about that, and we're a border town, we've had issues with meth for years. California is legal for marijuana. You know, you'd think that we have a heightened awareness. We have a very intelligent, community, 3.3 million people, and our overdose rate is up over 600% from opioids. I mean, I could break it down statistically. What is it? Oxycontin, what is it? The fentanyl, what is unknown? And they even have, because all the data now comes from the medical examiner. So it's not like someone's speculating. There's real data there. And if somebody has other drugs in their system and this percentage is greater than, say, fentanyl, the cause will be whatever that drug is, even if it's alcohol or Xanax or, some other medication or a heart attack that was caused by the combination of those drugs, which is going back to the Whitney Houston story. That's what happened to her. She had a variety of things in her body that studies showed. Even, Dr. Drew said, he goes, we don't know. We don't have enough information that if you're mixing a traditionally subscribed, SSRI like Lexapro or Zoloft, and someone's drinking and then takes some cocaine and it's cut with a little bit of fentanyl, normally any one of those would be fine, but mixing them together, it's a death outcome.
Yeah. So here's my problem, Scott. In 2021, we're saying it's over 100,000 people, right?
Well, that's what we know, yeah.
But that's not even accurate. Think about the amount of people that have overdosed and naloxone or whatever the other one is. Narcan has saved. They brought back, here in Arizona, I think it was like 47,000 saves. I have and we don't count that. I have a buddy that was hit 8 times. He was down 8 times, came back. Who carries 8 of them? And so they're not even putting that in the numbers. So we're being really, really shoddy on the numbers because we're saving a lot of people by using naloxone. We're getting that education.
Well, Brock, that was the point. They said there's 100,000 people that died from overdoses, roughly 275 a day in the country. Then they came out with this report that it was over 2 million overdoses. So in reality, if 20% of that was the morbidity rate, then 80% were saved with some sort of reversing opportunity. And right now, naloxone, which is in Narcan, but Narcan's the one you can carry and spray in the nose, those reversals, you're absolutely right. So when you think about it, it isn't just an epidemic with people that are overdosing and dying. It's an epidemic of a scale which is even greater than COVID. And what's interesting is with COVID, you can walk in a room and you can get it and get impacted by it, but you actually have to take fentanyl and you've got to put it in your body by yourself. And that is something that we can control, meaning we can stop that. It's hard when you're in a group of people, and even with masks on today, this new variant is still getting people infected, but it's not as bad. But still, you're absolutely right. Until we don't talk about it. And part of the reason I don't think we do, A, COVID, but B, it's the stigma. I mean, people think, well, gee whiz, Brock, if you're going to take, 800 milligram of Oxycontin every day and you're only prescribed 300, then the other 500, you're making that decision. So that's on you. I mean, in California, I mean, look at these new safe injection sites they've set up in New York. I don't know what your feeling is about them, and they have them in San Francisco. You can walk in as a heroin addict and you can say, look, I've got some stuff here. They'll look at it and go, this is not good. They'll give you some clean stuff to use. They'll give you a clean syringe. They'll have a nurse practitioner or an LVN oversight with what you're doing. And right now, the initial, I don't know, cursory studies show that they're saving lives, which is great. But that's a very unique form of harm reduction. Is taking somebody's bad heroin, giving them good heroin or some other substitute so they don't overdose, or go into detox. But, the way we're addressing it, and you're right, no matter what happens with the Sacklers and the Purdue company, there's still going to be a lot of money out there. I just read today that some pastor at a church, God bless him, got $10 million for drug treatment. And they had never, ever, ever helped a client before with substance use disorders. So if somebody like that, maybe some remote area where there wasn't a lot of treatment, but that's a lot of money to put in someone's hands who's never done treatment before, as a business or even as a profession, and has to hire a team, but has never coordinated it. There's going to be a lot of abuse like that. So, it's interesting that the problem is like a groundswell. It's like a tsunami that won't stop. It gets worse every day. But it's like the legislative leaders aren't taking a position. Local municipalities aren't. I mean, I'm a subject matter expert in my community. I've written a book about it, and I barely even get invited to the table with the county or the city and talk about it. I'm starting to now, but I've been on this fentanyl campaign for 5 years locally, and luckily we have a television station who supports me and lets me come on and talk about it. And to me, every time I get a chance to talk about it, it's a potential life that's saved. Anyway, but I'm going to drink a sip of water, and I know Fred has got.
I'm never this quiet. This is the longest I've ever been quiet.
Come on, Fred, what you got?
And it's Fred's show,
Well,
so.
I don't mind. Listen, I've got all the other shows too. So as long as people are talking about it, I think we're helping. So what is the intended use of fentanyl? What was it created for, and what is it useful for?
Let me give you my piece on it, and then Brock, you can chime in. And I did some study on it because I just did another piece on it. It was created in 1958. You had said 68, 58, 59. It was originally manufactured. It was a liquid form, and it was primarily put together to deal with high-level pain cancer patients. That was the primary use. It was never going to leave the hospital. It was only going to be, an IV injected, if you will, and only specifically for people that were suffering from a level of pain they couldn't manage any other way. And back in those days, Oxycontin hadn't been created yet. Morphine was the only other medication that I think was around. So, fentanyl was created to help people with that high level of pain so they could, at least sleep and calm down and try to ride through whatever process they were going through. And a lot of it was just, unfortunately, end of life, because that level of pain usually only comes at end of life, generally speaking. So that's what I know about the origination of it. So, Brock, anything else you got on?
No, you're absolutely right. And basically it attacks your pain receptors, and it kills pain. That's what it's made for.
Right.
You break your femur or something, they give you fentanyl. So what was interesting is after I got in my accident, because I was doctor shopping and I was able to manipulate the doctor a little bit, he ended up at the end starting giving me fentanyl patches. And I remember the fentanyl patches you had to wear with gloves. You couldn't touch it. It was super sketchy. It was new to the market. It was almost like a heat pad where you took the injury and you slid it on and you put it onto your, and you could only hold it on there for so long. But then people started taking the gel out of that, and then they started using the gel from the fentanyl and dying. Yeah. And Scott, I'm kind of glad you said that originally it was put into a water-soluble form, because in Arizona, we're starting to see it on the edibles. We're starting out like our marijuana edibles. We're starting to see it in vape pens. We had We had an issue. They're trying to verify how legit it was, but they're saying that it was in a vape pen, you know. And I understand that the heat can't. They're saying it can't make it that hot, but it is. We're finding in Visine, anything that you can spray, it's starting to get in your mouth, and people are like, "Well, what do you mean fentanyl? You can't make it water soluble." Yeah, you can.
Well, if it's a powder, you just like you treat it with heroin or cocaine. Now, Fred, before you go to the next question, I want to point something out because I got an interesting call this week from a guy who must have called me 5-6 times, never left a message, and he said, I saw your segment on fentanyl. He goes, I want you to know that I have been on Oxycontin for 10 years for major pain problems. And he says, I can't get it anymore. And I have a legitimate pain problem and there is no substitute. And, they're telling me to take Advil. I said, have they suggested yoga yet? He goes, it's funny. The doctor just told me I should do yoga. He says, I was up to about, 300 milligram a day with Oxycontin, all prescribed, he said, all legitimate, all verified. He says, now I can't get anything for my pain. And he goes, I'm going crazy. And he goes, I'm basically going to either have to go get some black tar heroin or I'm going to have to buy some fentanyl because I cannot live with this pain anymore. So the only reason I bring that up is that there are people out there who deserve the opportunity to have their pain treated. And there's a lot of the distributors of Oxycontin, that were, bribed or incentivized by Purdue and the Sackler family were pain docs. We had one in San Diego. He had a caseload of 5,000 people who were all pain patients. And basically they came for their checkups to get their their weekly dosage or monthly dosage. And, I want to pick a bone real quick. It was the DEA, this, Brock, a couple of years ago was exposed on 60 Minutes where they had been tracking this stuff down in, was it Virginia, for 10 years. They knew because every Oxycontin pill was manufactured by Purdue was assigned a stock number, a distribution number. It was tracked to the distributor. The distributor got it to the pharmacy. The pharmacy had to inventory it. The doctor had to write a script. And these were all people that had DEA approved licenses to sell this product. So they disclosed that the lobbyists, I don't know if you've seen Dope Sick yet. Michael Keaton is in the series. It was a book written by Beth Macy, and it's all about that journey of what happened and how doctors were incentivized and they distribute it. And it's just scary when you think about it because the DOJ and the DEA were basically held hostage by the lobbyists and we're told, leave it alone. It's a legal distribution system. It's a licensed doctor prescribing it. It's a licensed pharmacy that's filling it. And it's an insurance company who's paying for it. So it's almost like, it was like the tobacco industry, tobacco is good for you. Tobacco will make you look better. Tobacco will, it's the same kind of thing. And it was insane that it's gone on this long and so many people have died from it. They continue to die from it. And you know what? In my opinion, I'm going to shut up. It's not slowing down anywhere USA. It's not.
So going into like Scott and I often mention that maybe famous people, it works. Kids tend to listen to famous people. And since you have some insight into the NFL, for instance, for people that don't know, Brock's brother is the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And do you know if the NFL talks about fentanyl or anything like that? Because they deal in pain management a lot, I'm sure. And is it an issue in sports and stuff? Is it?
It's funny. I can't speak from that. I don't talk to my brother about fentanyl. I've never asked him, but I do work with a guy named Max Hall. I don't know if you remember him, played at BYU, went and played for the Arizona Cardinals. He had a concussion on the 1 yard line going in to score. And that was one of his gripes is the way, and this is just coming from him. You can hear from on his podcast as well, but he talks about the way that they just prescribed the opioids to get him back on the field, and I don't know how it is, and I don't know about the fentanyl, but you talk about very influential people. Look at Prince. Prince died of a fentanyl overdose, so, and I think a lot of it comes because we're uneducated, and And it's so, Scott, you said something really important, man, about these prescriptions. In 1 month in Arizona, I think we averaged like 136,000 prescriptions of opioids a month in Arizona. I mean, I don't exactly know how many people we have, but that's a lot of opioids. And then these doctors have a decision like they are doing with your friend, hey, I'm cutting you off. Now, I don't know about you, Scott, but that cutoff for me, when I had to start that detox process, I didn't go to the doctor. You know what I mean? I got rogue. I got pissed off. I dumped all my pills down the toilet and said, here you go. That was the biggest mistake of my life. Like, I seriously have, I mean, I know the buddy that you're talking about, he's scared to death to detox. That was the worst pain. I would rather be tasered. I would rather be pepper sprayed. I would rather be run over day after day after day before I would want to go through that 7 days of detox again. It's just that mentally taxing on somebody.
Yep.
So that opiate, they got you, man. It's a chemical hook. And so that's why, Fred, you're seeing these guys going from a normal life of opioids to that crossover to heroin. That's not a normal jump, but they're doing it because they're in pain.
Well, and they, you know, and marijuana doesn't fix it. Alcohol doesn't fix it. By the way, just as a factoid, because I'm full of them, I'm the guy that nobody ever invites to go on a long trip in a motorhome because the things I talk about kind of can scare people. But in 2016 in this country, this is a fact, 264 million prescriptions for OxyContin were written in this country in 1 year. And according to the CDC, 61% of those, this was 2 years ago, 61% of those prescriptions still sit in medicine cabinets somewhere USA.
Right. Yeah. And I'm guilty of that. We have talked about that.
Yep.
I hold because I don't have, Brock, I've never dealt with an addiction. I don't have an addiction or anything beyond smoking and stuff like that, but
Stuff like
drug
that.
addiction. So I often pick Scott's brain because I don't know what it feels like, but I do know that the things that I have been prescribed through the years, I've never used them all, from knee surgeries and stuff, and they just sit there. And Scott has opened my eyes to the danger of that, because now it provides it for my children possibly to get into, because they're just in a unlocked cabinet.
Or your children's friends, grandkids. I mean, that's the problem. That you know, the term pediatric morbidity, that shouldn't even be a term that we use, and that came about in the last 10 years because young kids were going to grandma's and they were, you know, rifling through the medicine cabinet because someone said, hey, you know, you can get some Valium, you can get Xanax, and then they go, well, what is this stuff? And that's where a lot of kids were getting a hold of OxyContin with medicine. I mean, I run a nonprofit called the Safe Homes Coalition, and our mission is to help educate people to get rid of unused and unsafe medication in the medicine cabinet. We're not even talking black market. We're not even talking fentanyl. We're talking oxy in the medicine cabinet, and get rid of that and other things. Because most people, when they get the pain medication, they take it for a couple days and they're fine. It's like antibiotics. You know, once you start feeling better, you stop taking it, you put it in the medicine cabinet, I'll save it for another day. And you know, you can't flush it down the toilet. You can't put it in the landfill. So it just kind of sits there. And, you know, that's a whole nother time bomb. You know, and right now, 80 milligram of OxyContin's $80 on the streets. So we've actually had people go into homes that were being tented, you know, for termites, and go in to steal drugs and end up dying inside the house.
Well, that's a Breaking Bad taught people that, because that's how Breaking Bad was making their meth, was pretending to be a tented house.
Fred, you just opened yourself up for a nightmare, man, by telling people that you have medicine in your house and your cabinets are open, man.
I know. Well, that's just how it is, but I'm okay with, I mean, mine are taken care of now, but this was before, when Scott opened me up to the program, because nobody ever talks about it. I didn't know there was a program, and it's right in my town. It was through the fire department. I put them in a bag, anything that was prescribed to me or my daughter or my son, and they check my ID. They check the prescriptions to make sure I'm not stealing other people's prescriptions and stuff, I guess, or just for statistics, and they sign off on it, and it's gone. And now it's out of my house, and now they're destroy them the right way, I guess.
Yeah, the DEA actually has what's called a take back day. They only have 2 days a year, unfortunately, because it would be nice to have it. And until COVID, the county building here in San Diego, most of the first responders, all the substations, they had these locked drop-off boxes. Even CVS and Walgreens started to get them, but people started stealing the boxes like they would ATMs. So, and there's a lot of liabilities. But pharmacist fulfills a high dosage schedule for a narcotic. They certainly can give people we use a bag. You put it in a bag, you mail it anonymously, and it goes to a couple of DEA compliant disposal sites. They incinerate it, and it's gone. But that's not something we talk about, and it's because it's a lot of work. That prevention piece, that education piece. I mean, out here, Brock, I don't know if you're seeing Arizona, just getting Narcan into schools is next to impossible. And I understand schools are overwhelmed right now and always have been. But, you remember that guy that he created that thing, Stop the Bleed, after all of, those shootings at schools where he said every kid should have a tourniquet in their backpack. And he got tremendous press around it for a long time. But you don't see people getting media. And I think it was the mayor in Atlanta who lost his son to an overdose. And I don't think she wanted to go public, but she was public about what happened. And, there's a senator and a congressperson, who come out, and, the Secretary of Labor, he's openly public about Marty, about being in recovery. His was alcohol from Boston, and he talks about it publicly. But to your point, Brock, we have to have the conversation at the dinner table, just like we do fruits, vegetables, nutrition, exercise, getting sleep, practicing self-care, and caring about each other. Because at 275 people a day, and that number, as you said, is probably double. And then there's probably another 1,000 that are having overdoses reversed, that when somebody dies, it's not just a person. We did a numbers thing a couple of years ago. It's almost 175 people that are impacted by one person's death. And that's assuming they weren't popular. If they were popular, it could go to thousands. Yeah, I mean, and look, by the way, before I forget, Demi Lovato, I just saw an article, I think it was yesterday, Fred, because we've talked about her. She's really anti-California sober now.
Yeah, I know.
And just went through treatment in Arizona during the holiday season to kind of get, I don't think, what was the phrase, refresher, or an uplifting field trip, whatever you want to call it. But she went back into rehab because she wanted to make sure, I'm assuming, that she's got the right tools now. And she said California sober was a stupid thing to try. And to say I'm giving up oxy, but I'm smoking marijuana and drinking wine,
well, I hope she does find the solution, because one thing she is a very powerful voice. And if she could turn it to the other direction, to where, because basically by her saying California sober, she was giving her fans and her people that believe in her a reason to drink, to do this. I could drink, but I can't do this. I could do. You guys are both addicts that fight it every day still, even though you're sober. It's a fight every single day.
But only during waking hours.
Right, during waking hours.
Hey, so Scott and Jeff, this is really important, man. We're talking about that Narcan, naloxone, trying to get it. In Arizona, it is super difficult to get our hands on. Our fire departments, our police departments are struggling. I've talked to some people about it. They've called me up. I've had captains call me up, say, hey, all we can get right now are the shots, the intramuscular shots. We can't get anything nasal. And then not only that, but okay, so we have this epidemic. How about these test strips? Yeah, we're gonna start giving these test strips out. Nobody can get test strips right now. So the people, like, even if that was a valid, which I think is crazy, especially because now even the test strips can come up negative. They can come up wrong. Right? They're not perfect solutions. So now we got these guys testing. Whoa, man, shoot. Right before I injected myself, I tested it. It was negative. Now I'm dead. And so it's just kind of like this, this vicious cycle, man. So why not talk about preventative? Why not get on and talk about, hey, guys, let's go back to the basics. Let's find out the root of the problem. Let's see if we can work in reverse versus saying it's okay to shoot up because you've tested it. Keep killing yourself. I just, in my brain, it's I don't know.
Right. It's counterproductive, but we talk about it often. We never know what the solution is. All we could do is talk about it. And that's part of ending the stigma, is stop it from all angles, whether it's judging people that are homeless, addicts, overweight, anything that's a stigma. If we could eliminate it, it helps solve the problem itself. So unfortunately, we're about to run out of time.
Make it popular to get sober. You know, Brock, about 3 months ago, San Francisco, somebody sent me a picture. It's a big billboard. It says, if you're going to party with opioids, be sure you and your partner, and you go together as a couple, both have Narcan on your person. It's like they're basically promoting the overdose reversing drug, because technically the average person can get it, at a pharmacy. And it's interesting. I spoke to Narcan, the company, and I'm trying to get, a way to work with them, because they're a small company. They claim they only have 7 or 8 people working there. And what happened was, in November, they ran out of product because the demand was so high. And I said, and they give it away to schools, and it should, first responders anywhere in the country shouldn't have to pay for it, but they have a distribution supply line that they only can give away so much. And if they can't, and they gave so much away, they ran out, and they weren't going to have more, supposedly, to be able to meet the demand until February of this year. And that was based on all the data we had last year. And we know how low that is. So I'm hoping that, they'll be able to, or some of these benchmark settlements will be able to put money in the hands of the right people to be able to educate, inform, and promote that you do have a choice, and addiction is treatable, and there is hope and help.
Well, before we end this, unfortunately, we have to end it very soon, because I think we could probably talk together for 24 hours straight and still have a show the next day, because this is never ending, but hopefully we did some good. What I want to know from Brock is about his show. And first of all, what is Chase the Vase, the term itself, and talk about your podcast.
Yeah, cool, man. Chase the Vase is basically it's a World War I story. And it was about this veteran that came home, and he was put on a test. And the test was the quest of the blue vase, man, the chase of the blue vase. And basically the blue vase in Scott, in my mind, because we're both recovering addicts, is sobriety. Sobriety became that vase. What's that next thing you're chasing? So for a lot of it's sobriety. Maybe it's a marriage. Maybe it's to have kids and make $1 million or whatever it is. Have a successful podcast. It's that next thing that forces us to be super active in our sobriety. So that's what Chase the Vase is. It's a podcast. I have a business. I work with veterans, work with first responders, to give them hope, man, that they can look at guys like Scott and I and say, hell, man, if those two ugly guys can do it, we can do it. And there's a system to it. And let's just go to work. And that's the goal of the podcast. So the podcast is called Chase the Vase. And man, I love promoting hope.
And it's available on all formats, Apple, Spotify, everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I'll make sure to put a link up for Chase the Vase, but I want to thank Brock for joining us. Scott also has his own podcast, which is Happy Hour. And you're weekly, right, Scott? Every Saturday?
I am every Saturday. I've had a little bit of a hiatus because I was waiting for Brock. Brock, reach out to me. Let's get you on the show. We haven't had you on my show, have we?
No, man, I haven't been. I'm honored. I would love to come on.
Yeah. So text me, and then we'll set it up either. I think this week, because Martin Luther King weekend, but maybe a week from Saturday, we'll get you on and we'll do our own thing together. It'd be great.
Hey, Scott, book your show when we're off the air. Why you got to book your show on the air?
Right.
Fredd, you said to me, take every opportunity you can to promote yourself.
Well, let's move on to Ending the Stigma is also available in audio. I take this and I put it into audio. That's available every Tuesday. And so you'll be able to rehear this. Is that a word? Hear this.
Not really.
Whatever it is. And also I've got my new show, Apostrophes Writer Series with Double D. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. So I think it was an interesting discussion. I think we did well getting our points across and trying to figure it out. and let's hope we save somebody out there. So if anybody wants to get a hold of Scott, how do they do that, Scott?
But they pick up the friggin' phone or text me at 619-993-2738.
That's 619-993-2738. Call Scott anytime. Text him. He will get back to you. Trust me. The reason he does it, he often says, is he would much rather spend a half hour with you on the phone than an hour at your funeral. And he will do his best to find you the help that you need wherever you are in the world, primarily in the United States, because that's what we're dealing with mostly. But and you could reach out to us through any of these outlets that we have. So that's the end of the show. I thank Brock for joining us. Let's hope his brother gets to keep his job in Jacksonville, because he deserves it, because he did a great job. If people don't know, he was on a team that was going nowhere at this point, and he gave them the reason to play and fight, and they beat those Indianapolis Colts, who I can't stand. Go Patriots. Let's hope they keep moving on and moving forward. And I will end it with my saying, which Scott makes me say every week, is if nobody has told you they love you today, we love you. And this is ending the Stigma Path to Recovery. We'll see you all again next week. Goodbye.